The scorching August heat pressed down on Riverside, California, like a suffocating blanket. In the low-income housing complex known as Pine Valley Apartments, where air conditioning was a luxury most couldn't afford, tensions always ran higher during the summer months. But nothing could have prepared this tight-knit community for what was about to unfold on that fateful Tuesday morning. Maria Santos had always been the kind of person who minded. At 23, she was already a mother to 2-year-old Natalia, a bright-eyed toddler with curly hair who could light up any room with her infectious giggle. Maria's struggles with addiction were no secret in the complex. Everyone knew about her battles with methamphetamine, the failed rehab attempts, and the constant worry about whether Child Protective Services would show up at her door again. What most neighbors didn't know was that Maria had been clean for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of fighting every urge, every craving, every moment of desperation that threatened to pull her back into the darkness. She was doing it for Natalia, sweet, innocent Natalia who deserved better than a mother lost in a chemical haze. The morning started like any other. Maria had fed Natalia breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast cut into little squares, just the way her daughter liked them. She'd dressed her in the pink Disney princess dress that had been a gift from Maria's sister Sophia, who lived 2 states away and sent care packages whenever she could. The plan was simple: take Natalia to the community playground, let her burn off some energy on the swings, maybe meet some other mothers who might not judge her past too harshly. But Maria never made it to the playground. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Mrs. Henderson from apartment 4B spotted something that would trigger a chain of events no one could have imagined. The elderly woman, known throughout the complex for her tendency to watch everyone's business from her kitchen window, saw what appeared to be a small bundle, wrapped in a black garbage bag near the dumpster behind Building C. Something wasn't right about it, she would later tell the police, her voice trembling with the weight of what she thought she'd discovered. The shape, the way it was just lying there. I knew it wasn't regular trash. Mrs. Henderson's scream pierced through the morning air when she opened the bag and found decomposed remains. In her shock and horror, she immediately jumped to the worst possible conclusion. These were the remains of a child. Word spread through the complex like wildfire, fueled by fear, anger, and the kind of mob mentality that can transform ordinary people into something unrecognizable. "Where's that drug addict's baby?" someone shouted from the growing crowd. "When's the last time anyone saw little Natalia?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Maria, who had been in her apartment getting ready for their trip to the playground, heard the commotion outside and stepped onto her small balcony to see what was happening. The sight that greeted her was terrifying. Dozens of neighbors, their faces twisted with rage, all looking up at her with accusatory eyes. "Murderer!" The word cut through her like a knife. "You killed your own baby! What are you talking about?" Maria screamed back, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "Natalia's right here, she's inside." But in the chaos of the moment, with emotions running high and rational thought abandoned, no one wanted to hear explanations. The crowd had already decided Maria's guilt, and they were out for blood. Social media posts began circulating within minutes, grainy photos of the garbage bag, accusations flying faster than facts could be checked. "This is what happens when druggies have kids," read one Facebook post that would be shared hundreds of times before the day was over. "Justice needs to be served." The 21st century had given birth to a new kind of mob justice, one that operated at the speed of a tweet, where court of public opinion delivered verdicts long before any real court could intervene. And Maria Santos, a young mother fighting her demons and trying to build a better life for her daughter, was about to become its latest victim. As the crowd outside grew larger and more violent, Maria clutched Natalia closer to her chest, both of them trembling with fear. She had no way of knowing that the remains in that garbage bag belonged to a medium-sized dog that had died of natural causes. She had no way of knowing that her boyfriend, Jake Morrison, Natalia's father and her partner in both love and addiction, had been the one to dispose of the animal after finding it dead in the alley behind their building. All she knew was that her world was collapsing around her, and the people she'd lived alongside for 2 years were calling for her blood over a crime she hadn't committed. The stage was set for a tragedy that would shock not just Riverside, but the entire nation. The Riverside Police Department's response time that Tuesday morning was 14 minutes, a delay that would later be dissected endlessly in news. Reports, congressional hearings, and civil rights investigations. 14 minutes that felt like an eternity to Maria Santos, who watched from her second-floor window as the crowd below transformed from concerned neighbors into something far more dangerous. Detective Sarah Chen was the first officer to arrive on scene, pulling up in her unmarked sedan just as the crowd had swelled to nearly 50 people. A 10-year veteran of the force, Chen had seen her share of domestic disputes and neighborhood tensions in this part of Riverside County, but nothing had prepared her for the raw hatred emanating from the mob gathered around Building C. "What we have here is a potential homicide," she radioed back to dispatch, surveying the scene. The black garbage bag had been torn open completely, its contents spilled across the concrete. From her vantage point, Chen could see what appeared to be skeletal remains, though something didn't look quite right about the bone structure. "I need backup units and the coroner's office, ASAP," but the crowd wasn't interested in waiting for proper procedure. Social media had already convicted Maria Santos in the court of public opinion. Facebook posts were multiplying by the minute, each one more inflammatory than the last. A live stream from someone's phone showed the garbage bag contents, with a caption that read, "Baby killer lives in Apt 2C, justice now." Jake Morrison, Natalia's father, had been 3 blocks away at the time, standing in line at the unemployment office, trying to get his benefits straightened out after missing his last appointment due to a 3-day drug bender. When his phone started buzzing with notifications, he initially ignored them. Social media drama was the last thing he needed when he was trying to get his life together. The first message that caught his attention was from his cousin Danny. "Bro, you need to get home now. Something bad is happening with Maria." Jake's hands shook as he scrolled through the messages flooding his phone. Photos of the garbage bag, screenshots of posts calling Maria a murderer, videos of the angry crowd outside their apartment building. His heart sank as the pieces started falling into place. The dead dog he'd found behind the dumpster 3 days ago, the way he'd hastily wrapped it up and thrown it away without thinking about how it might look. He tried calling Maria, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He tried calling the apartment landline, disconnected for non-payment last month. Panic rising in his chest, Jake abandoned his place in line and started running toward home, but by then it was already too late. The crowd had made their decision. Detective Chen's attempts to maintain order were futile against the fury of people who believed they were protecting their community from a child killer. In the age of viral justice, facts moved slower than emotions, and emotions had already reached a boiling point. "She's up there with the body," someone screamed, pointing toward Maria's apartment. "She's probably destroying evidence right now." The truth was far different. Maria sat on her living room floor, holding 2-year-old Natalia close to her chest, both of them crying as the shouts from outside grew louder and more threatening. She'd tried to call 911 3 times, but the lines were jammed with other callers reporting the same incident. She'd tried to post on her own Facebook page to show everyone that Natalia was alive and safe, but her hands were shaking too badly to operate her phone properly. "Mama scared," Natalia whispered, her tiny fingers clutching Maria's shirt. "I know, baby. I know everything's going to be okay," Maria lied, because what else could she tell a 2-year-old? How do you explain to a toddler that the world has gone insane, that people are calling for your death over something you didn't do? Detective Chen made one last attempt to control the situation. Using her megaphone, she addressed the crowd. "This is an active police investigation. I need everyone to step back and let us do our job. No one has been charged with any crime," but her words were drowned out by the chanting that had begun. "Justice for the baby! Justice for the baby. The chant was picked up and amplified on social media, turning into a hashtag that would trend nationally within hours. An Justice for the baby. News vans began arriving, drawn by the social media buzz and the promise of a sensational story. Local TV reporters set up their cameras, broadcasting live updates to audiences hungry for the next big scandal. What none of them reported, what none of them bothered to verify, was that the baby everyone was seeking justice for was alive and terrified, hiding in apartment 2C with her mother. The mob had become its own entity now, fed by social media outrage and the intoxicating feeling of righteous anger. When someone threw the first rock at Maria's window, it shattered more than just glass. It shattered the last pretense of civilized behavior. "Come down here and face what you did." The voices merged into a single roar of condemnation. Detective Chen called for riot control, but the nearest unit was 20 minutes away, dealing with a multi-car accident on the interstate. She was effectively alone, watching helplessly as American justice devolved into something that belonged in a different century entirely. The crowd began to move toward the building entrance, and Maria Santos, young mother, recovering addict, innocent of the crime she was accused of, realized that her time was running out. The apartment building's security door had been broken for 6 months. Landlord complaints, tenant petitions, and even a visit from the city housing inspector had failed to get it fixed. On that Tuesday afternoon, this mundane example of neglected maintenance became the final barrier between Maria Santos and the mob that wanted her blood. It took them less than 30 seconds to force their way inside. Maria heard the door slam against the concrete wall, followed by the thunder of footsteps on the metal stairs. Her small apartment was on the 2nd floor, close enough that she could hear individual voices now, could make out specific threats being shouted by people she'd seen at the community barbecue just 2 months earlier. "Natalia, baby, we need to hide," she whispered to her daughter. "But where do you hide in a 600-square-foot apartment?" The bedroom had no lock. The bathroom window was too small to escape through. The fire escape led directly down into the courtyard where more angry faces waited. Detective Chen's voice crackled over her radio. "I need all available units to 1247 Pine Valley Drive immediately. We have a crowd of approximately 60 people attempting to enter the building. This is now a riot situation." But all available units in Riverside County meant 3 patrol cars and a supervisor who was stuck in traffic 12 miles away. The community had been hit hard by budget cuts over the past 5 years. Reduced police presence, closed community centers, eliminated social programs. When people felt abandoned by the system, they sometimes decided to become the system themselves. The pounding on Maria's door started at 2:17 p.m. Security footage from the hallway would later show a crowd of at least 20 people packed into the narrow corridor, their faces twisted with rage. Among them were people Maria recognized. Tom Bradley, who worked at the gas station down the street. Susan Martinez, whose kids played with Natalia at the community playground. David Chen, no relation to the detective, who had helped Maria carry groceries to her car just last week. "Open this door, you child-killing bitch!" The words came from Susan Martinez, the same woman who had complimented Maria on Natalia's adorable pigtails just days before. "We know you're in there." Tom Bradley's voice was hoarse from shouting. "Come out and face what you did." Maria pressed her back against the door, holding Natalia so tightly that the little girl began to whimper. "Please," she called out, her voice breaking. "Please, just listen to me. Natalia is right here. She's alive. She's okay." "Liar!" someone screamed. "We saw the body. We saw what you did." The first kick nearly broke the door off its hinges. The second one sent splinters flying across the small living room. By the third kick, Maria knew she was out of time. In those final moments, she made a decision that would haunt investigators for years to come. Clutching Natalia close to her chest, she ran to the bedroom and locked her daughter in the closet. "Stay here, baby," she whispered through the thin wooden door. Stay quiet, like we're playing hide and seek. Don't come out no matter what you hear, okay? Mama loves you so much." Natalia's muffled voice came from inside the closet. "Mama? Mama scared? Don't be scared, sweet girl. Just stay hidden." Those were the last words Maria Santos would ever speak to her daughter. The door exploded inward just as Maria stepped back into the living room. The mob poured in like a flood, their faces contorted with the kind of rage that had fueled lynchings across America for centuries. This wasn't justice. This was something far older and more primitive, dressed up in the modern language of social media outrage. Jake Morrison arrived at Pine Valley Apartments at 2:23 p.m., 6 minutes too late to save the woman he loved. He pushed through the crowd outside, screaming Maria's name, but the sound was lost in the chaos. Detective Chen tried to grab him to pull him back, but he broke free and ran toward the building. The scene he found in apartment 2C would require years of therapy to process. Maria's body lay motionless on the living room floor, surrounded by overturned furniture and broken glass. The mob had already begun to disperse, their bloodlust satisfied, many of them already posting on social media about the justice they'd delivered. "Where's Natalia?" Jake screamed, falling to his knees beside Maria's still form. "Where's my daughter?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. In their rush to punish Maria for a crime she hadn't committed, had the mob also harmed an innocent child? The apartment was small. It wouldn't take long to search every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. But when they found the bedroom closet, it was empty. Detective Chen arrived upstairs, just as Jake was tearing apart the bedroom, looking for any sign of his daughter. "She was here," he kept saying, his voice breaking. "She had to be here. Maria would never leave her alone." A systematic search of the apartment revealed no trace of 2-year-old Natalia Santos. Her favorite stuffed animal was gone. The small pink backpack Maria used to carry her diapers and snacks was missing from its usual spot by the door. It was as if the little girl had simply vanished into thin air. Within hours, the story would take on a new dimension that made it even more horrifying. Not only had a mob killed an innocent woman, but a 2-year-old child was now missing, possibly dead, with no one knowing what had happened to her. The Riverside County Coroner's Office worked through the night to examine the remains found in the garbage bag. Dr. Patricia Williams, the chief medical examiner, had performed thousands of autopsies during her 20-year career, but she'd never had to deliver news quite like what she discovered at 3:47 a.m. on Wednesday morning. The remains weren't human. They belonged to a medium-sized dog, likely a pit bull mix, that had died of natural causes approximately 1 week earlier. DNA testing would later confirm that the animal had no connection to Maria Santos or anyone in her family. A young mother was dead, a toddler was missing, and the evidence that had triggered it all was nothing more than the decomposed body of a stray dog that someone had tried to dispose of discreetly. The case that would shock America was just beginning. The morning after Maria Santos's death, Riverside woke up to a very different reality. What had seemed like justified community action in the heat of the moment now looked like something far more sinister in the cold light of dawn. Social media posts that had called for justice just hours earlier were being deleted en masse as people began to realize what they had participated in, or at the very least, what they had cheered for. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Martinez arrived from the Los Angeles field office at 6 a.m., tasked with investigating what federal prosecutors were already calling a potential hate crime and civil rights violation. Martinez, a 15-year veteran who had worked everything from organized crime to domestic terrorism cases, knew that mob violence cases were among the most difficult to prosecute. When dozens of people were involved in a death, establishing individual culpability became a legal nightmare. "What we have here," she told Detective Chen during their first briefing, "is a perfect storm of social media hysteria, economic desperation, the kind of case that old-fashioned vigilante justice or destroys them." The investigation immediately split into two urgent tracks: finding those responsible for Maria's death and locating 2-year-old Natalia Santos, who remained missing more than 18 hours after her mother's murder. Jake Morrison became both the key witness and the prime suspect. His explanation for the dog remains seemed plausible. He'd found the dead animal behind the dumpster, in a garbage bag, and tossed it without thinking about how it might look. But his history of drug use, combined with his absence during the critical time period, made investigators suspicious. "Where were you really yesterday morning?" Agent Martinez pressed during his formal interview. "And don't tell me you were at the unemployment office for 4 hours. We checked. You were there for 45 minutes. Jake's lawyer, an overworked public defender named Robert Kim, advised his client to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. But Jake was desperate to find his daughter, and he believed cooperation was his best strategy. "I was getting high," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I scored some meth from a dealer on Magnolia Street, went to the abandoned warehouse on Industrial Boulevard, and got wasted. I'm not proud of it, but that's the truth. I was supposed to be getting my life together, and instead I was getting high while my family was being destroyed." The admission made Jake look terrible in the media coverage that was now dominating national news cycles, but it also provided him with an alibi. Security cameras at a nearby business confirmed his presence at the warehouse during the time of Maria's death. Toxicology tests showed levels of methamphetamine in his system consistent with his story. But if Jake hadn't taken Natalia, then who had? And where was she now? The search for the missing toddler became the largest operation in Riverside County history. Hundreds of volunteers joined professional search teams combing through drainage ditches. The FBI brought in specialized cadaver surrounding the city. The California National Guard provided helicopter support for aerial searches. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma cases, was brought in to consult on the investigation. Her theory was disturbing but logically sound. In cases of mob violence, especially when children are present, there's often a secondary trauma response. Someone in that crowd may have genuinely believed they were her supposedly murderous mother. They may be hiding her, thinking they're protecting her. This possibility opened up an entirely new investigative avenue. If someone had taken Natalia during the chaos, believing they were saving her from harm, they might be keeping her in secret, too afraid to come forward. Now that the truth about the dog remains had been revealed, Agent Martinez authorized a media campaign designed to appeal to potential rescuers. The message was carefully crafted. "If you have Natalia, you're not in trouble. We understand you may have been trying to protect her. Please call this number and let us help you return her safely to her family." The phone lines were flooded with tips, most of them worthless. Reported sightings came in from as far away as Florida and Washington state. Every lead had to be investigated, every possibility explored, even as the chances of finding Natalia alive grew smaller with each passing day. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation into Maria's death was yielding arrests. 23 people were eventually charged with various crimes ranging from unlawful assembly
social media
to
evidence
felony
proved
murder.
crucial.
Dozens of participants had live-streamed or photographed their involvement, creating an unprecedented digital record of a lynching. The legal proceedings that followed would take years to resolve. Some defendants claimed they were only observers, caught up in crowd mentality. Others argued they genuinely believed they were preventing a child killer from escaping.
Like Tom
Bradley
Justice
from the gas station expressed genuine remorse for their actions. "I don't know what came over me," Bradley testified during his plea hearing. "I saw that bag, heard people saying it was a dead baby, and I lost my mind. Maria was a good person trying to get her life together, and I helped kill her over something that wasn't even true." But the most haunting testimony came from Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman whose initial discovery had triggered the entire tragedy. Now confined to a wheelchair and requiring oxygen assistance due to the stress-related health problems that had developed since that terrible day, she spoke in a voice barely audible to the courtroom. "I thought I was helping," she whispered. "I thought I was protecting other children from a monster. Instead, I created the monster. I killed an innocent girl and lost her baby. There's no forgiveness for what I started. 6 months after Maria Santos's death, Natalia remained missing. The FBI had followed over 3,000 leads across 48 states. They'd interviewed everyone who had been present at Pine Valley Apartments that day, conducted polygraph tests on potential suspects, and offered a $100,000 reward for information return leading to her safe. Jake Morrison, cleared of any involvement in his daughter's disappearance, became the public face of the search effort. Clean for the first time in years, driven by grief and determination, he appeared on every news program that would have him, holding up photos of Natalia and pleading for her return. "She's just a baby," he would say, his voice breaking with emotion. "She doesn't understand what happened to her, Mama. She's probably scared and confused, wondering why no one's coming to get her. Please, if you know anything, if you have her, just bring her home." The case that had shocked America was far from over. Maria Santos was dead, buried in a small ceremony attended by her sister Sophia and a handful of friends who remembered the young woman she had been trying to become. 23 people faced criminal charges for their role in her death, and somewhere, possibly still alive, possibly lost forever, was 2-year-old Natalia Santos, the child whose disappearance had transformed a tragic story of mob justice into something even more heartbreaking. The question that haunted everyone involved remained unanswered. Where is Natalia Santos? This devastating case of media misinformation gone wrong and the tragic consequences the dangerous when communities take justice into their own hands. Maria Santos lost her life defending against a crime she never committed, while her innocent daughter Natalia vanished without a trace. A mystery that continues to haunt investigators and the public to this day. What happened in Riverside, California, could happen anywhere in America. In our age of instant communication and viral outrage can spread faster than accusations, and digital lynch mobs can form in minutes rather than hours. The Santos case serves as a stark reminder of why due process exists, why we must verify information before sharing it, and why social media vigilantism represents a clear and present danger to innocent people everywhere. But this story isn't over. Natalia Santos would be 4 years old now, and she's still out there somewhere. Maybe she's being raised by someone who genuinely believed they were saving her from harm. Maybe she's living under a different name, unaware of the tragedy that separated her from her father. Or maybe she's in a situation where she needs our help to come home. If you have any information about Natalia Santos's whereabouts, please contact the FBI tip line immediately. Even the smallest detail could be the key to bringing this little girl home and providing closure to a case that shocked the nation. Don't let Maria Santos's death be in vain. Help us find her daughter and restore some measure of justice to this heartbreaking story. Share this story, but share it responsibly. Let it serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of mob mentality and the importance of seeking truth before seeking vengeance. Together we can prevent future tragedies like this one, and maybe, just maybe, bring Natalia Santos home where she belongs.